While parked next to a deserted bus stop, Marcus jumped when someone knocked rapidly on his car window. Outside stood an elderly woman, drenched and trembling, desperately begging for help. Marcus quickly opened the door, but when she saw him reaching for his phone to call for help, she panicked. She grabbed his wrist and whispered, "Please, don't let anyone find me." Realizing she was running from someone, Marcus brought her home, gave her a warm meal and a place to rest. What he didn't know was that she was no ordinary homeless, and this reckless decision was about to change his life forever. Before we dive in this story, let us know where you're watching from. Drop it in the comments. The alarm went off at 5:47 a.m., 13 minutes before Marcus actually needed to wake up. He'd set it early years ago, back when he believed those extra minutes meant something. Now they just meant 13 more minutes of staring at the ceiling, running numbers in his head. Rent, electric, gas, food. The field trip permission slip was sitting on the kitchen counter, asking for $12 he'd already spent twice in his mind. He reached over and silenced the alarm fast, almost violently. The walls in this building were thin. Mrs. Patterson next door worked nights too, different shifts, and the last thing Marcus needed was another passive-aggressive note about noise considerations taped to his door. The apartment wasn't much. 2 bedrooms, if you were generous with the word. A kitchen that doubled as a dining room that tripled as his daughter's homework station. But it was clean. Marcus made sure of that. Clean and careful, everything in its place, because when you don't have much, you take care of what you've got. He swung his legs over the bed and his feet found the cold floor, no slippers. He'd given his to Maya last winter when hers fell apart, told her his feet ran hot anyway. She believed him. Kids believe their fathers, at least for a while. The bathroom mirror showed him what it always showed. 34 years old, looking 42. Lines around his eyes that hadn't been there 5 years ago. A face his mother would have called dignified, and his ex-wife called exhausted. Both were right. He brushed his teeth with the toothpaste he'd been rolling from the bottom of the tube for 2 weeks now. Shaved with a razor that needed replacing 3 shaves ago. Put on the work uniform he'd ironed the night before, ironed it more carefully than the job required, because showing up crisp meant something. Meant you still cared. Meant you hadn't given up yet. When Marcus opened the refrigerator, the light flickered once before catching. Inside, leftover rice clumped in a container, 2 boiled eggs from yesterday, a nearly empty bottle of ketchup, and just enough milk for 1 bowl of cereal. He did the math automatically. Maya gets the cereal. He gets the eggs. That's breakfast sorted. He moved to the counter and picked up the small tin can sitting next to the microwave, pried off the lid. Inside, coins and crumpled bills, organized by denomination. He counted it the way he counted it every morning. $47.23. Rent was due in 6 days. He needed $623 more. Marcus separated out $2 in quarters, slid them into the jar labeled milk, and put the rest back in the tin. The jar now held $4.50. Almost there. He heard the shuffle of small feet on linoleum and turned to see Maya standing in the doorway of her room. 8 years old, hair wrapped in the silk bonnet he'd learned to tie from YouTube videos after her mother left. She was wearing her school uniform already. She always dressed herself now, insisted on it, but she was holding her shoes in one hand, laces dangling. "Morning, baby girl." "Morning, daddy." She yawned, not covering her mouth, still too sleepy for manners. "Did you sleep?" The question hit him somewhere in the chest. She'd been asking that a lot lately. 8 years old and already worrying about her father's sleep schedule. "Not yet," he said, then caught himself. "I mean, yeah. I slept. I'm fine." Maya gave him a look. The one that said she knew he was lying but loved him too much to call him out. "You work too much," she said. "I know, you always say you know, because I always do." He walked over and knelt down in front of her, taking the shoes from her hands. The left one had a small tear near the toe. He'd noticed it last week, added shoes to the mental list of things he couldn't afford yet. He threaded the laces through, pulled them snug, tied them the way he always did, double knot, tight but not too tight, loops even on both sides. They're good to go. Maya looked down at her feet, then back at him. "Thanks, Daddy. That's my job." He stood up, knees cracking in a way they hadn't cracked at 25, and grabbed his jacket from the hook by the door. Maya's backpack was hanging next to it, the purple one with the star patch she'd picked out herself. The patch was slightly crooked, he'd sewn it on late one night when his hands were too tired to keep the stitches straight. She'd never mentioned it. Maybe she hadn't noticed, or maybe she had and didn't care, because her daddy sewed it, and that was enough. "Come on," he said. "Bus in 20. They walked to the door together, and Marcus did what he always did before leaving. Checked the lock twice, looked through the peephole at the empty hallway, listened for footsteps that weren't there. It was a habit now, so ingrained he barely noticed he was doing it. But Maya noticed. Maya noticed everything. "Why do you always look?" she asked once months ago, just making sure he'd told her. Sure of what? He hadn't answered. Didn't know how to explain that when you look like him, living where he lived, in a country that looked at him the way it did, you learn to check, to listen, to be aware of who was watching, who was waiting, who might decide today was the day they had a problem with you existing in their space. He'd never been arrested, never done anything wrong, but he knew 3 men from high school who had. Good men, careful men, men who checked the hallway too and still ended up on the wrong side of a misunderstanding. So Marcus checked, every time. The hallway was clear. "Let's go," he said. And they stepped out together into another day. The walk to the bus stop was 3 blocks. Maya held his hand for the first 2, then let go when they got close to the corner where other kids gathered. He understood. 8 was the age when holding your father's hand started to feel like something to be embarrassed about. He remembered being 8. He remembered a lot of things. "You got your lunch?" he asked. "You packed it last night, just checking." "You always check." "That's because it's your job," she finished, smiling. "I know, Daddy." The bus pulled up, yellow and loud and smelling like diesel. Maya moved toward the door, then stopped, turned back. "Daddy." "Yeah." She looked at him with those eyes, her mother's eyes, the only thing of her mother's she'd gotten to keep. "Don't work too hard today, okay?" Something cracked in his chest, small, hairline. The kind of crack you don't notice until it's too late. "I'll try, baby." She nodded, satisfied, and climbed onto the bus. He watched until the doors closed, until the bus pulled away, until it turned the corner and disappeared. Then he stood there for a moment longer, just breathing. $3 short. He'd figure it out. He always did. The shift at the warehouse started at 7 and ended at 4, unless they needed extra hands for the evening load, which they always did. Marcus didn't mind the overtime. Overtime meant time and a half, and time and a half meant maybe he could catch up on the electric bill before they added the late fee. The work was simple: lift, carry, stack, scan, sort, repeat. The kind of work that didn't require thinking, which was good, because thinking was expensive. Thinking meant remembering. Remembering meant feeling, and feeling in that warehouse, under those fluorescent lights, surrounded by men who'd learned to keep their feelings locked in boxes just like the ones they carried. Feeling was a luxury none of them could afford. Marcus worked his section alone mostly. That was fine. He wasn't antisocial, just careful. Careful about what he said, who he said it to, how his words might be heard, or twisted or remembered. In a place like this, in a job like this, being careful was the only job security that mattered. At lunch he sat in the corner of the break room with his container of cold rice and the 2 boiled eggs from this morning. The other guys talked about the game last night, about their wives and girlfriends and kids, about the supervisor who was definitely sleeping with someone in HR. Marcus listened, nodded when expected, laughed when appropriate, but he didn't join in. Joining in meant being seen. Being seen meant being remembered. Being remembered meant that if anything ever went wrong, a missing shipment, a complaint, a rumor, his name might come up. And Marcus had learned long ago that his name coming up was never good news. So he ate his rice, he peeled his eggs, and he watched the clock count down the hours until he could go home to his daughter. The drive home was 40 minutes on a good day, an hour when traffic conspired against him. Tonight it was somewhere in between, rain just starting to spit against the windshield as he pulled into a spot near the old bus stop on Clement Street. He checked his phone. Darnell was running late. 10 minutes, maybe 15. The text had said something about a stuck drawer at the shop, about the part Marcus needed for Maya's bike taking longer to wrap up than expected. Marcus didn't mind waiting. The car was warm, the radio was playing something soft, some R&B station Maya had programmed last week, and for a few minutes he didn't have to be anywhere. Didn't have to smile for customers, didn't have to calculate which bill could wait and which one couldn't. He thought about Maya, about the field trip form, about whether Mrs. Patterson might lend him $20 until Friday if he asked nicely enough, or whether asking would mean owing, and owing meant being vulnerable, and being vulnerable meant. He stopped the thought, pushed it down where it belonged. Watched the rain streak down the windshield. The wipers were off now, and the water gathered in rivers across the glass, blurring the streetlights into soft orange smears. The sound of rain on the roof filled the car, kept the silence from getting too loud. He was calculating the electric bill again. If he paid half now, would they give him another 2 weeks on the rest? When the knock came. Knock. Knock. Marcus stiffened instantly, heart jumping into his throat. His hand tightened around the steering wheel. He turned his head slowly. An old woman stood there. White. Elderly. Soaked through, rainwater dripping from her hair and coat. She stood too close to the car, one hand raised where she'd knocked, the other clutching her coat like it was the only thing holding her together. Every instinct he'd spent 34 years developing screamed at him to start the car. To not be a black man alone with a white woman in the middle of the night on a street where no one would see the truth, only the story someone else decided to tell. He knew the math on this, knew it the way he knew his own name. Black man plus white woman, plus empty street plus nighttime equaled nothing good, equaled questions he couldn't answer, equaled assumptions he couldn't fight, equaled a phone call, a flashing light, hands on a hood, and a daughter waiting at home for a father who might not come back. His hand moved toward the ignition, and then he heard her voice, muffled through the glass. Please, please help me. You're listening to an original story from the official Shiny Stories channel. Marcus's hand stopped, hovered between the key and the wheel. The woman knocked again. Weaker this time. Her palm pressed flat against the window, leaving a print in the condensation. Please, she said again. Please, I don't know where else to go. He looked at her through the rain-streaked glass. Really looked. She wasn't just old. She was terrified. Soaking wet, shivering, clutching her coat like it was the only thing keeping her attached to the earth. Her eyes, wide, wild, hunted, locked onto his, and in them Marcus saw something he recognized. The look of someone who had nowhere to go. He sat there, hands on the wheel, staring at his own reflection in the rearview mirror. Keep the doors locked, the reflection said. This isn't your problem. You have a daughter. You have a life. Small as it is, it's yours. Don't risk it for a stranger. He thought about Maya, about the way she looked at him this morning, asking if he'd slept. He thought about the words he'd said to her 100 times, 1,000 times, so many times they'd become the rhythm of their lives. We don't have much, but we don't look away. The reflection stared back at him. This is different, it said. This is dangerous. You know what could happen. He did know. That was the problem. He knew exactly what could happen, had seen it happen, had watched the news stories, had attended the funerals, had held his daughter tight on nights when the world reminded him that his life was conditional, always conditional, subject to the interpretation of someone who might decide he didn't belong. And still, Marcus unlocked the door. The woman didn't move at first, just stood there shaking like she couldn't believe the sound she'd heard. Then her hand found the handle, and she pulled the door open just enough to lean in, rain dripping from her hair onto the seat. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you, ma'am. Are you okay? Do you need help? She didn't answer, just stared at him with those wild eyes, rain dripping down her face like tears. Marcus reached for his phone. I can call someone for you. An ambulance maybe, or no, the word came out sharp, desperate. She shook her head hard enough that water flew from her hair. No calls. Please, don't call anyone. Marcus paused, phone in hand. Ma'am, you're soaking wet, it's cold out. If you're in trouble don't call them. Call who? She didn't answer, just kept shaking her head, kept clutching her coat, kept looking at him like he was both salvation and threat rolled into one. Marcus looked around. The street was empty. No cars, no pedestrians, no witnesses, just him, this woman, and the rain that wouldn't stop. He ran the calculations one more time. Black man, white woman, night, empty street, phone in his hand, one button away from doing the right thing, the safe thing, the thing that would keep his name out of whatever story came next. But the woman's hand shot out and grabbed his wrist. Her grip was weak but desperate, her fingers ice cold and trembling. "Please," she whispered. "Please don't let them find me." The silence stretched. Rain filled it. Marcus looked at her hand on his wrist, then at her face. Up close he could see things he'd missed before. The quality of her coat, expensive, even wet, a thin gold chain around her neck, the kind that cost more than his monthly rent, manicured nails, chipped now but still careful. This wasn't a homeless woman. This wasn't someone who belonged on a bus stop bench at midnight. "Who's looking for you?" he asked quietly. She didn't answer. "Ma'am, I want to help, but you have to tell me something. Who are you running from?" Her grip tightened, her eyes filled with something that might have been tears, or might have been rain. "Everyone," she said. And then she let go. Marcus sat there, phone still in hand, watching her curl back into herself. She wasn't going to explain, wasn't going to give him a story he could use to justify whatever he did next. He thought about his daughter again, about the rule he'd taught her, about what it meant and what it cost and whether it applied here, now to this woman who was clearly in trouble but also clearly a risk, a massive life-altering risk, to everything he'd built. "We don't have much, but we don't look away." He thought about looking away, imagined it, putting the car in drive, going home, heating up leftover rice, helping Maya with her homework, pretending this never happened. It would be easy, no one would ever know, but he would know. And Maya would know, not tonight, not tomorrow, but someday, when she was old enough to understand the shape of the man who raised her, she would know that her father was the kind of person who drove past. Marcus put his phone down. "Okay," he said quietly, "just for tonight." The woman didn't argue, didn't thank him, didn't do anything except nod once and let him help her into the car. She was lighter than he expected, frail in a way that expensive coats couldn't hide. When she settled into the passenger seat, she curled toward the door like she was trying to make herself as small as possible, like she'd had practice being invisible. Marcus didn't ask questions. Not yet. He just drove. The rain came down harder. The wipers fought a losing battle. And in the passenger seat, a stranger he never should have stopped for sat shivering, clutching her coat, watching the road like she expected something terrible to emerge from the darkness at any moment. One night, Marcus told himself. Just one night. In the morning you figure it out, call someone, find her people, do the right thing. But for now, for just one night, you don't look away. The car turned onto his street. The apartment building loomed ahead, dark except for a few scattered windows. Marcus pulled into his parking spot and killed the engine. "We're here," he said. The woman looked at the building, then at him. "Thank you," she whispered. And for the first time since he'd seen her, something in her eyes shifted, softened, became almost human again. Marcus nodded once. "Come on," he said. "Let's get you warm." This story is produced by the official channel, Shiny Stories. The apartment felt smaller with a stranger in it. Marcus moved through the space the way he always did, automatically, efficiently, turning on the one lamp that still worked, grabbing a towel from the bathroom, putting water on for tea. The kettle was dented on one side, a relic from a yard sale 3 years ago, but it still worked. Most things in Marcus's life were like that, dented but functional. The woman stood just inside the door, dripping onto the mat, looking around with eyes that were still wild but starting to calm. She took in the small kitchen, the worn couch, the stack of Maya's drawings on the coffee table. Her gaze lingered on the refrigerator, on the cracked heart magnet holding the electric bill, and something flickered across her face that Marcus couldn't read. "Here," he handed her the towel, "bathroom's down the hall if you want to dry off." She took the towel but didn't move, just stood there, clutching it, staring at him. "I don't," her voice cracked. She cleared her throat. "I don't know how to thank you." "You don't have to. You shouldn't have stopped." "Probably not." "Then why did you?" Marcus didn't have an answer, or he had too many answers, none of which would make sense out loud, so he just shrugged and turned back to the kettle. "Tea's almost ready, sit down if you want. Couch isn't much, but it's dry." She sat on the edge of the couch like she expected it to collapse beneath her, like she expected everything to collapse beneath her. Marcus brought her the tea, chamomile, the cheap kind from the discount grocery, but hot, and she wrapped both hands around the mug like it was the first warmth she'd felt in years. "Thank you," she said again. Marcus sat in the chair across from her, close enough to talk, far enough to give her space. The distance felt important. "What's your name?" he asked. She hesitated. "Eleanor." "Marcus, I know." She gestured vaguely at his uniform, at the name stitched above the pocket. He'd forgotten he was still wearing it. "Right." He leaned back in the chair. "Eleanor, you want to tell me what happened tonight?" She shook her head. "You want to tell me who you're running from?" Another shake. "You want to tell me anything at all?" She looked down at her tea. Steam rose between them. "I just wanted to breathe," she said finally. "Just for one night, I wanted to breathe." It wasn't an answer, but somehow it was enough. The sound of a door opening made them both turn. Maya stood in the hallway, wrapped in her blanket, blinking sleep from her eyes. She looked at her father, then at the stranger on their couch, then back at her father. "Daddy?" "Hey baby." Marcus stood up slowly, keeping his voice calm. "Go back to bed, okay? Everything's fine." But Maya didn't move. She was staring at Eleanor, with the unfiltered curiosity that only children possess. No judgment, no fear, just pure open interest. "Who's that?" "This is Eleanor. She got caught in the rain. She's going to stay here tonight, just until the morning." Maya considered this. Then she padded across the room in her bare feet, blanket trailing behind her, and stopped in front of the couch. "Are you cold?" she asked Eleanor. Eleanor blinked, her eyes glistened, a little she admitted. Maya nodded solemnly. Then she walked to the corner of the room, picked up an old stuffed bear from the basket of toys, and brought it back. "You can hold him if you want," she said. "He's warm. His name is Captain." Eleanor stared at the bear. Her hands trembled as she took it. "Thank you," she whispered, and then so quietly that Marcus almost missed it. "Emma." Maya tilted her head. "I'm Maya." "I know, I'm sorry." Eleanor's voice broke. "You remind me of someone." They looked at each other, the old woman and the little girl, and something passed between them that Marcus couldn't name. A recognition maybe, a connection that didn't need explaining. "Okay baby girl." Marcus put his hand on Maya's shoulder. "Time for bed." Maya looked up at him, then back at Eleanor. "Will she still be here tomorrow?" "We'll see. I hope so." Maya smiled at Eleanor, a real smile, the kind that didn't calculate or protect, and then let her father guide her back to her room. Marcus tucked her in the way he always did. Blanket to her chin, quick check of the nightlight, soft kiss on her forehead. "Daddy?" "Yeah baby. Is she okay?" "The lady? I don't know, but we're going to help her." Maya nodded satisfied. "That's good," she said. "That's what we do. That's what we do." Marcus turned off the light, and stood in the doorway for a moment, watching his daughter's eyes close. She was asleep within seconds, the way only children and the truly exhausted can be. He walked back to the living room. Eleanor was still on the couch, still holding the bear, but something had changed. The wildness in her eyes had faded. In its place was something softer, sadder, more real. "Your daughter is beautiful," she said. "I know, she has a kind heart." "She does." Eleanor looked down at the bear in her hands. "I had a granddaughter once, a long time ago." Marcus didn't ask what happened, didn't push. Some doors he knew, only opened when they were ready. "You hungry?" he asked instead. "I can make something. It won't be much, but anything," she said. "Anything at all." The refrigerator offered limited options. Marcus stared at its contents. The clumped rice, the ketchup, the eggs, and did the math the way he always did. There was enough for 2 meals, maybe 3 if he stretched. Feeding Eleanor meant less for tomorrow. He made the noodles anyway, simple, hot, a little butter, a little salt, nothing special. But when he handed the bowl to Eleanor, and watched her take the first bite, watched her eyes close, and her shoulders drop, and her whole body release something it had been holding, for God knew how long, he understood why his mother always said food was a language. Eleanor ate slowly, carefully. Her hands still shook, but less than before. "This is good," she said. "It's just noodles." "No." She looked up at him. "It's more than that." They sat in comfortable silence while she finished. Outside, the rain had slowed to a drizzle. The apartment was quiet, except for the soft hum of the refrigerator, and the occasional creak of the building settling. Marcus noticed things about her now that he hadn't before. The way she held her fork, elegantly, automatically, like someone who'd been taught proper etiquette long ago. The way she sat, straight-backed even when exhausted, chin lifted, even when defeated. Small things, but they added up. "You weren't always like this," he said. It wasn't a question. Eleanor set down her fork. "Like what?" "Running, scared, alone." She was quiet for a long moment. "Then no, I wasn't always like this." "What happened?" "Time." She stared at the empty bowl. "Time happened. And people who decided they knew better than I did what my life should look like." Marcus understood that more than she knew. "I saw your necklace," he said carefully, "earlier, at the bus stop." Her hand moved to her throat, touching the thin gold chain. "It's nice," he continued. "Expensive. It was my mother's." "So you're not." He stopped, not sure how to say it. "Poor." Eleanor's smile was thin, bitter. "No, Marcus, I'm not poor. Though I imagine, from where you're sitting, that seems impossible. Just curious." "Curious about what?" "Why would a woman like me be sitting in the rain on a bus stop bench in a neighborhood like this?" "Something like that." Eleanor picked up the bear again. "Hold it against her chest." "I was looking for something," she said. "Something I lost a long time ago. Something money can't buy." She didn't explain what. Marcus didn't ask. Later, when Eleanor had fallen asleep on the couch, still holding the bear, still wearing her damp coat, Marcus sat alone in the kitchen. The TV was on low, some late-night news program flickering in the corner. He wasn't watching it, not really, just letting the voices fill the silence while he thought about what to do next. He should call someone. That was the obvious answer. The right answer. A woman this age, this fragile, clearly not in her right mind. Someone must be looking for her. Someone must be worried. But she begged him not to. "Please don't let them find me." And there was something in her voice when she said it, something that made him hesitate. Fear, real fear. Not of the cold or the rain, or being alone, but of something specific, someone specific. "Who?" the TV murmured in the corner. "Authorities are asking for help, locating a 73-year-old woman missing from a private care facility in the city's northeast district." Marcus's head turned slowly. Eleanor Whitmore, heiress to the Whitmore textile fortune, was reported missing early this morning. Family members say she suffers from early-stage dementia and may be confused. On the screen, a photo, professional, posed, taken years ago, but unmistakably the woman sleeping on his couch. "Anyone with information is urged to contact." Marcus stared at the television. Heiress, fortune, private care facility. He looked at the couch, at Eleanor, at the thin gold chain still visible around her neck. On the TV the anchor continued. "The Whitmore family has offered a substantial reward for any information leading to her safe return." Marcus's mouth went dry. He walked slowly to the couch, and stood over her sleeping form. She looked smaller now than she had in the rain. Smaller and older, and infinitely fragile. In her sleep, she murmured something. He leaned closer to hear. "Don't let them find me," she whispered. "Please, don't let them find me." Marcus straightened up. Tomorrow, he told himself. Tomorrow, he told himself. Tomorrow he'd figure this out. Tomorrow he'd make the right choice, the smart choice, the choice that kept him and Maya safe. But tonight, the woman on his couch was just Eleanor, just a stranger who needed help, just a person who for a few hours had found a place where she could breathe. Tonight, that was enough. You're listening to an original story from the official Shiny Stories channel. Morning came gray and cold. Marcus woke before the alarm, the way he always did when something was wrong. His body had learned to sense trouble long before his mind caught up, a survival instinct honed by years of living in a world that didn't always want him to survive. He lay in bed for a moment, listening. Rain had stopped, traffic was starting to build outside, and from the living room, he could hear the soft murmur of the television, still on from last night. He got up, got dressed, walked to the living room. Eleanor was awake, sitting on the edge of the couch, staring at the TV. Her own face stared back at her from the screen. "The Whitmore family has increased the reward to $50,000 for information leading to Eleanor Whitmore's safe return." Marcus stood frozen in the doorway. Eleanor didn't turn around, didn't acknowledge him. just sat there watching herself be described as missing, confused, in need of immediate care. "They're looking for you," Marcus said quietly. "I know, they say you have dementia, I know. Do you?" Eleanor finally turned to look at him. Her eyes were clear, clearer than they'd been last night. "I'm 73 years old," she said. "My memory isn't what it was. I forget things sometimes. Names, dates, where I put my keys." She paused. "But I'm not confused about this. I knew exactly what I was doing when I left, and I know exactly why I can't go back. Tell me." She looked at him for a long moment, then she shook her head. "I've already put you at risk by being here. You have a daughter, a life. I won't make it worse by—" The doorbell rang. Marcus felt his heart stop. The doorbell rang again. 3 sharp tones, impatient. He looked at Eleanor. She had gone pale. "Don't," she whispered. "Please." But Marcus was already moving, not toward the door, toward the peephole. He pressed his eye to it and looked. 2 people stood in the hallway, a man in a tailored suit, a woman holding a leather folder, both white, both composed, both looked at his door like they already owned what was behind it. "Mr. Thompson," the man called out. "We know you're in there, we just want to talk." Marcus didn't answer. "We're here on behalf of the Whitmore family. We believe you may have information about Eleanor Whitmore's whereabouts." Still nothing. "Mr. Thompson, we're not here to cause trouble, but you should know, this is a legal matter. Keeping a vulnerable adult from her family could have serious consequences." Marcus turned away from the door. I looked at Eleanor. She was shaking. Not the cold and wet shaking from last night. This was deeper. Fear shaking. Soul shaking. "How did they find me?" she whispered. "I don't know. I was so careful. I thought." The knocking started again. Harder this time. "Mr. Thompson, we can do this the easy way or the hard way. The easy way involves you opening this door and having a civilized conversation. The hard way involves police, lawyers, and a lot of questions about why a man in your position would be harboring a missing person. A man in your position." The words landed like a punch. Marcus understood exactly what they meant, understood the threat wrapped in the polite language, the weapon hidden in the reasonable tone. He was a black man, she was a white woman, and the people on the other side of that door had money, lawyers, and a story they were ready to tell. Marcus made a decision. He unlocked the door. The man in the suit smiled when the door opened. It wasn't a warm smile. "Mr. Thompson, thank you for your cooperation." "I'm not cooperating with anything. I'm letting you say your piece, then you're leaving." The smile didn't waver. "Of course. May we come in?" "No." The woman made a note in her folder. "Fair enough," the man said. "We understand that Eleanor Whitmore is inside your apartment. Is that correct?" Marcus didn't answer. "We're not accusing you of anything, Mr. Thompson. We just want to take Mrs. Whitmore home. Her family is very worried. She doesn't want to go home." The man's expression flickered, just for a moment. "I'm sorry. She asked me not to call anyone. She asked me not to let anyone find her. That means she doesn't want to be found." "Mr. Thompson," the man's tone shifted, still polite, but harder now. "Mrs. Whitmore has dementia. She's not capable of making decisions about her own welfare. That's not an opinion, it's a medical fact. Her family has legal guardianship, which means keeping her here, against her family's wishes, is not just inadvisable, it's illegal." Marcus felt the ground shifting beneath him. He knew the man was right, knew the law, knew the system, knew that his good intentions meant nothing against paperwork and money and power. "She's scared," he said anyway. "She's scared of going back. She's confused." "That's different, is it?" The man sighed, checked his watch. "Mr. Thompson, I'm going to be honest with you. The Whitmore family doesn't want any trouble. They don't want media attention. They don't want legal complications, and they certainly don't want to create problems for someone who, by all appearances, was just trying to help. But this situation needs to be resolved. Today, now, or what?" The smile returned, colder now. "Or we make some phone calls to the police, to Child Protective Services, to your employer." He paused. "You have a daughter, don't you? Maya, I think her name is, 8 years old."
Marcus's blood turned to ice. What did you just say? I'm just pointing out that this situation could get complicated for everyone involved, and it doesn't have to be. You can hand over Mrs. Whitmore. We can all go our separate ways, and no one, including your daughter, has to deal with any unpleasantness. The threat hung in the air, undisguised now. Marcus looked at the man, at the woman with her folder, at the empty hallway behind them, the peeling paint on the walls, the flickering light overhead. He thought about Maya, about the field trip form, the $12, the milk jar on the counter. He thought about all the things he could lose, and then he stepped aside. They didn't take long. The man went in first, followed by the woman. They found Eleanor still on the couch, still pale, still clutching the stuffed bear Maya had given her. Mrs. Whitmore, the man's voice softened, practiced compassion, professional warmth. Your family is so worried, let's get you home. No, Mrs. Whitmore, I said no. Eleanor's voice cracked but held. I don't want to go back there. I won't. I understand you're upset, but this isn't safe. You're not well. I'm not crazy. No one said you were crazy. You're saying I can't make my own choices. The man glanced at his colleague. Something passed between them. Mrs. Whitmore, you have a medical condition. It affects your judgment. Your family loves you and wants what's best for you. That's all this is. Eleanor looked past him, looked at Marcus, standing in the doorway with his hands at his sides and his heart in his throat. Tell them, she said. Tell them what I told you. Marcus opened his mouth, closed it. What could he say? He was nobody. A warehouse worker, a single father barely making rent. Against these people, their suits and folders and legal authority, what could he possibly say that would matter? Mr. Thompson was kind enough to give you shelter for the night, the man said smoothly. We're very grateful for that, but now it's time to go home. Eleanor kept looking at Marcus, waiting, hoping. He thought about his daughter, about the man's words, about the phone calls that could be made, the questions that could be asked, the life that could be dismantled with a few well-placed accusations. I'm sorry, Marcus said. He barely recognized his own voice. I'm sorry, Eleanor. Something broke in her face. He watched it happen, watched the hope drain out, replaced by resignation, by disappointment, by a terrible understanding. I know, she whispered. I know you are. They took her gently, professionally. The woman held her arm. The man carried the small bag of nothing she'd brought with her. They were careful, courteous, showing Marcus exactly how civilized they could be when they got what they wanted. At the door, Eleanor stopped, turned back. Maya had emerged from her room, standing in the hallway in her pajamas, watching with wide eyes. Eleanor looked at her for a long moment. You have a kind heart, she said. Don't ever let anyone take that from you. Maya didn't understand. How could she? She was 8 years old, and the world hadn't taught her yet that kindness could be a liability, that helping someone could cost you everything, that good intentions were no protection against people with power and no conscience. Bye, Maya said softly. I hope you feel better. Eleanor smiled. It was the saddest smile Marcus had ever seen. I hope so too, sweetheart. I hope so too. The door closed behind her. Original audio by Shiny Stories. The fallout started small, a phone call from his supervisor the next day. Not angry, exactly, just careful. The careful tone people used when they were about to say something they didn't want to be quoted on. Marcus, I got a call this morning, from some people asking about you. What kind of people?
The kind that don't usually call warehouses about their employees, if you know what I mean. He knew. They didn't say anything specific, just asked if you worked here, how long, what kind of worker you were. I told them you were solid, one of our best. A pause. But Marcus, I need to ask, are you in some kind of trouble? No. You sure? Because if there's something going on, there's nothing going on. Another pause. Longer this time. Okay. I believe you, but Marcus, be careful. Whatever this is, it's got people paying attention, and people paying attention. He didn't finish the sentence. Didn't need to. Marcus understood. People paying attention meant people watching. Watching meant waiting. Waiting meant finding something. Anything that could be used against him. He thanked his supervisor, hung up, sat in his car for 10 minutes staring at the steering wheel. Then he drove to work and tried to pretend everything was normal. The neighborhood noticed too. Mrs. Patterson, who had lived next door for 6 years and never said more than hello, and please be quiet after 10, suddenly had opinions. "I saw them take that woman from your apartment," she said, when Marcus passed her in the hallway, not looking at him directly, looking at the wall, the floor, anywhere but his face. "White woman, old, looked expensive, she needed help." Still not looking. "My cousin got in trouble like that once, tried to help some woman whose car broke down. Next thing you know, police are at his door, asking questions. 'I'm not in trouble, didn't say you were.'" She finally looked at him. Her eyes were not unkind, but they were wary, the wariness of someone who knew how the world worked. "Just saying, sometimes helping isn't worth it. Sometimes the best thing you can do is keep walking." She went into her apartment and closed the door. Marcus stood in the hallway alone. The whispers spread. He heard them at the grocery store, at the bus stop, in the parking lot, at work. Never direct, never to his face, but always there. The static of other people's suspicions, buzzing just below the surface. "Did you hear about Marcus Thompson? Kept some old white woman at his place overnight. Rich white woman. I heard she was confused, like mentally not all there. What was he doing with her?" "I'm not saying anything. I'm just saying, what was he doing with her?" Marcus ignored it. What else could he do? He couldn't explain, couldn't defend himself, couldn't tell them about the rain, the bus stop, the fear in Eleanor's eyes, the bear his daughter gave her, the way she whispered, "Don't let them find me," in her sleep. They wouldn't believe him anyway. People believed what they wanted to believe. And what they wanted to believe was that a black man didn't help a white woman without wanting something. The money hit next. He'd spent more than he planned that night. The extra noodles, the tea, the gas to drive across town in the rain. It wasn't much objectively, maybe $10 total. But $10 when you're already $3 short is the difference between making it and not making it. He sat at the kitchen table after Maya went to bed, surrounded by bills, electric, gas, rent, the field trip form still unsigned, still asking for $12 he didn't have. The jar labeled milk sat on the counter, still $3 short. He opened his wallet, counted what was inside, did the math. The math didn't work, it never worked, but this time it really didn't work. He put his head in his hands. Maya found him like that, past midnight, still at the table, still staring at numbers that refused to add up. "Daddy," he lifted his head, tried to smile. "Hey baby, what are you doing up?" "I had a bad dream." She padded over, climbed into his lap, nestled against his chest. "What are you doing?" "Just thinking." "About money?" "Yeah, about money." She was quiet for a moment. Then, "Daddy, is helping people bad?" The question hit him like a truck. "What?" "The lady, Eleanor. You helped her, right? You let her stay here because she was cold and scared." "Yeah, but now you're sad, and people are being mean, and the money is wrong." She looked up at him with those big eyes. "So is helping people bad?" Marcus couldn't answer. His throat had closed up. "Because you always tell me we help people." Maya continued. "You always say that. We don't have much, but we don't look away. You say it all the time." "I know." So was it wrong? Helping her. He held his daughter tight, pressed his face into her hair, breathed in the smell of the cheap shampoo he'd bought on sale, the fabric softener that was almost out, the unmistakable scent of his child. "No," he said finally, "it wasn't wrong." "Then why is everything bad now?" He didn't have an answer. He didn't have an answer for any of it. A week later Marcus learned what had happened to Eleanor. He heard it from someone at work, who'd heard it from someone else, who'd read it in a small article buried in the back of the local paper, the kind of article no one pays attention to unless they're looking. Eleanor Whitmore had been returned to her family's care. She was currently residing at a private facility, the same facility she'd escaped from. She was receiving treatment for her condition. Translation: they were medicating her into silence. The article didn't say that, of course. The article said she was resting comfortably and responding well to treatment, and her family was grateful to have her home. But Marcus read between the lines. He thought about the fear in her eyes, the way she begged him not to call anyone, the way she'd said, "I just wanted to breathe," and he realized he'd handed her back to the people who had been suffocating her. That night, after Maya was asleep, Marcus sat alone in the dark. He thought about the man in the suit, the threat about Maya, about the police, about child protective services. He thought about the whispers in the neighborhood, the call from his supervisor, the bills on the table. He thought about Eleanor, somewhere across town, probably sedated, probably staring at a wall, probably wondering why the man who had promised to help had given her back to her captors. He thought about all of it, and then he thought about his daughter's question, is helping people bad? He didn't sleep that night. He didn't sleep for many nights after. Thanks for listening on the official Shiny Stories channel. The truth came out in pieces, not all at once. Truths like this never reveal themselves cleanly. They seep through cracks, drip from whispered conversations, accumulate in corners where people think no one is watching. Marcus wasn't watching. He was trying to move on, trying to forget, trying to convince himself that he'd done the only thing he could, and that Eleanor's fate wasn't his responsibility anymore. But the truth had other plans. It started with a nurse. She approached him in the parking lot of the grocery store one evening, looking over her shoulder like she expected someone to be following her. "You're him, aren't you? The one who found Mrs. Whitmore?" Marcus's guard went up immediately. "Who's asking?" "I used to work at the facility, the one they took her back to." She glanced around again. "I quit last week, couldn't take it anymore." "Take what?" "The way they treat her, the way they treat all of them." Marcus waited. "She tried to leave before, multiple times. Every time they brought her back. Every time they increased her medication. Every time they told the family it was for her own good." The nurse's voice shook. "But I saw her, before all that. When she first came in, she wasn't confused. She wasn't lost. She knew exactly what she was doing. She was trying to escape." Escape from what? From them. From her family. They never visited, never called, just paid the bills and forgot about her. She paused. "Do you know what she used to say? Every night before bed she'd say, 'I just want someone to see me.' That's all she wanted. Someone to actually see her." Marcus thought about the night in his apartment. The noodles, the bear, the way Eleanor's eyes had softened when Maya spoke to her. "What do you want me to do about it?" he asked. The nurse shrugged helplessly. "I don't know. I thought you should know. What you did for her, that night, it was the first time in years someone treated her like a human being. She told me that. Before they sedated her again, she told me to find you and tell you thank you." She walked away before Marcus could respond. He started digging after that, quietly, carefully, using the library computers because he didn't have internet at home, staying late after work to search for information about Eleanor Whitmore, the Whitmore family, the facility that held her. What he found made his stomach turn. The Whitmore family was rich, old money, textile money, the kind of wealth that had buildings named after it, and politicians answering its calls. But old money had old problems, and the Whitmore's biggest problem was Eleanor. She was the last of her generation, the only one left who remembered how the money was made, who knew where the bodies were buried, literally and figuratively. And she had opinions, strong opinions about how the family fortune should be used, who should control it, what debts needed to be paid. Her children didn't share those opinions, so they had her declared mentally incompetent. Guardianship granted, power of attorney transferred, and Eleanor with her sharp mind and her sharper memory, was locked away in a gilded cage and told she was crazy every time she tried to speak. Marcus read the court documents, the medical evaluations, the carefully worded reports that described a confused old woman who needed protection from herself. But between the lines he saw something else. He saw a woman who had been silenced, a woman who had tried to escape not because she was lost, but because she was the only one who still knew the truth. A woman who had ended up on a bus stop bench in the rain because it was the only place left where no one knew her name. He understood now. That night when Eleanor grabbed his wrist and begged him not to call anyone, she wasn't confused. She was clear, clearer than she'd been in years. She wasn't running from herself. She was running toward someone who might actually listen. And Marcus, who had nothing, who was nobody, who had his own problems and his own fears and every reason in the world to drive past. Marcus had been the only one who stopped. "You were looking for something," he'd said. "Something money can't buy," she'd replied. Now he knew what it was. Human contact. Real human contact. Not the sanitized care of nurses who were paid to smile.
Not the occasional visit from relatives who looked at their watches the whole time. Not the processed food, and the scheduled activities and the medication that made everything soft and distant and bearable. Just someone who saw her. Just a bowl of noodles and a cup of tea and a child who offered a stuffed bear because she thought it might help. That was what Eleanor had been looking for, and she'd found it. And then Marcus had given her back. He sat in his car outside the library staring at the folder of documents he'd printed. He couldn't fix this. He knew that. He was one man, one poor man, one black man with no connections and no power and no way to fight the kind of people who could make problems disappear with a phone call. But he couldn't pretend he didn't know. He couldn't go back to his life and act like Eleanor was just a stranger he'd met once in the rain. She had trusted him. She had asked for his help, and he had failed her. Maybe he could still do something. Maybe. He went home that night and sat down at the kitchen table. Maya was doing homework. She looked up when he pulled out the laptop, an ancient thing, borrowed from a friend, held together with hope and electrical tape. "What are you doing, Daddy?" Marcus opened a new document. "I'm going to tell a story," he said. What kind of story? He thought about it for a moment. A true story, about an old woman who just wanted someone to see her, and about what happens when nobody does. Maya nodded, satisfied, and went back to her homework. Marcus started to write. "You're listening to an original story from the official Shiny Stories channel." The night before he posted it, Marcus almost deleted everything. He sat in front of the laptop, cursor hovering over the document, reading the words he'd written for the 100th time. It wasn't an accusation, he'd been careful about that. No names were mentioned, not the family, not the facility, not anyone except Eleanor herself. He didn't claim to have proof of anything. He didn't pretend to know the full story, he just told the truth. "One rainy night, I almost drove past." That was how it started. And then the bus stop, the woman, the fear in her eyes, the apartment, the noodles, the bear, the way his daughter offered kindness without calculation, and the way Eleanor had looked at her like she was seeing something she'd forgotten existed. He wrote about the morning after, the people at the door, the threats wrapped in polite language, the way they took her gently, professionally, and the smile on her face as she left, the saddest smile he'd ever seen. He wrote about what he'd learned since, the facility, the family, the sedation, the silence. She just wanted someone to see her. He wrote at the end, "That's all." She wasn't confused. She wasn't lost. She was the clearest person I've ever met, and they're making her disappear. "I'm not looking for money. I'm not looking for fame. I'm not looking for anything except this. I want people to know what's happening. I want someone to ask questions. I want someone to look at Eleanor Whitmore and actually see her." That's all she ever wanted. Maya appeared in the doorway, rubbing her eyes. "Daddy, why are you still up?" Marcus looked at the clock. "Past midnight, just finishing something." "What? Remember the lady, Eleanor?" Maya nodded. "I'm trying to help her, the way we should have helped her before." Maya was quiet for a moment, then she padded over and looked at the screen. "Is that the story?" "Yeah, it's long, it has to be." "Are you scared?" The question caught him off guard. He looked at his daughter standing there in her pajamas, too young to understand but old enough to ask. "Yeah," he admitted. "I'm scared." "Why?" "Because of the threats. Because of the power. Because of what happened to men who looked like him when they made trouble for people who looked like them. Because sometimes doing the right thing is scary," he said instead. "Sometimes it costs something." Maya thought about this. "But we still do it right, because it's right." Marcus pulled her into a hug. "Yeah, baby, we still do it." She yawned against his chest. "Okay, can I go back to bed now?" "Yeah, go ahead." She shuffled off. He heard her door close. He looked at the screen again. At the cursor still hovering, he clicked post. The response was not what he expected. He expected nothing, honestly. He'd posted on a small blog, a local community forum, the kind of place that got maybe a few hundred views a day if it was lucky. He expected it to disappear into the void like everything else. Instead it went viral, not immediately. These things never happen immediately, but within a day someone had shared it on social media. Within 2 days a local news station had picked it up. Within a week the story of Eleanor Whitmore, the heiress, the escape, the man who found her was everywhere. And so was Marcus. The comments were mixed. Some people praised him, called him a hero, a good Samaritan, an example of humanity at its best. This man gave up everything to help a stranger. We need more people like him. Finally, someone is paying attention to elder abuse. Thank you for speaking up. Marcus Thompson is a real one. Much respect. But others, why was this man keeping an old white woman in his apartment overnight? Something doesn't add up. What was he really after? I'm just saying, if this was a white man and a black woman, no one would be calling him a hero. Check his record. There's always something. Marcus read the comments in the break room at work, feeling his stomach sink with each scroll. He'd known this would happen, had prepared himself for it. But reading the words, seeing his name attached to suspicions and accusations, and the same old story that had been told about men who looked like him for centuries still hurt. He put the phone down, went back to work. The Whitmore family responded 3 days later. A statement released through their lawyers. The Whitmore family is aware of recent allegations circulating on social media regarding the care of our beloved mother and grandmother, Eleanor Whitmore. These allegations are baseless and hurtful. Eleanor is receiving excellent care at a private facility, where she is treated with dignity and compassion. The family asks for privacy during this difficult time and trusts that the public will not be swayed by the unsubstantiated claims of individuals seeking attention. No denial, no specifics, just a vague request for privacy and an implication that Marcus was lying for attention. The next day he received a letter. Official letterhead, legal language, words like defamation and malicious intent and custodial rights. At the bottom a clear threat: if Mr. Thompson does not immediately remove the offending post and issue a public apology, the Whitmore family will pursue all available legal remedies, including but not limited to civil action and referral to Child Protective Services regarding the welfare of his minor daughter. Marcus's hands shook as he read it. They were coming for Maya. He almost gave up. That night he sat at the kitchen table with the letter in front of him, Maya asleep in the other room, and he almost gave up. What was one old woman's life worth? Against his daughter's safety, her future, the only thing in this world that actually mattered to him. He opened the laptop, navigated to the post, hovered over the delete button. Just click it, he told himself. Just make this go away. You tried. No one can say you didn't try. But some fights aren't yours to fight. Some battles are too big. His finger touched the mouse, and then his phone buzzed. A message, unknown number. Mr. Thompson, my name is Sarah Chen. I'm a reporter for major newspaper. I've been investigating the Whitmore family for 6 months. Your post confirmed things we've suspected but couldn't prove. Can we talk? Marcus stared at the message. Then he looked at the delete button. Then back at the message. He didn't delete the post. This story is produced by the official channel Shiny Stories. The story broke 2 weeks later. Not just his story, the whole story. Sarah Chen had been digging for months, and Marcus's post had given her the final piece she needed: a witness, someone outside the family, outside the facility, outside the carefully controlled narrative, someone who had seen Eleanor Whitmore as a person rather than a problem. The article ran on the front page of a major newspaper. Heiress silenced. Inside the battle for Eleanor Whitmore's freedom, it detailed everything. The guardianship proceedings which had been rushed through a friendly judge, the medical evaluations which had been conducted by doctors with financial ties to the family, the facility which had billed the Whitmore estate millions while providing minimal actual care, and the medications. God, the medications. Eleanor had been prescribed enough sedatives to knock out someone twice her size. Every time she tried to speak up, tried to advocate for herself, tried to assert her rights, more medication, more sedation, more silence. The public reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Other people started coming forward. The nurse who'd approached Marcus in the parking lot gave an interview. So did a former caregiver at the facility. So did a lawyer who'd once tried to represent Eleanor before being muscled out by the family's legal team. The picture that emerged was damning. Eleanor Whitmore wasn't mentally incompetent. She was inconvenient. She'd wanted to donate half the family fortune to charity, education programs, housing initiatives, the kinds of things that would have reduced the inheritance her children expected. So they'd gotten rid of her. Legally, quietly, politely, the perfect crime, if no one ever looked too closely. But now everyone was looking. The Whitmore family's response was predictable. Lawyers, statements, denials, a hastily assembled PR team that tried to spin the story as a case of family tragedy rather than family betrayal. "We love our mother deeply," one of the children said in an interview. "This has been incredibly painful for our entire family. We only want what's best for her." But the tide had turned. People weren't buying it anymore. The hashtag #FreeEleanor started trending. Protesters gathered outside the facility demanding an independent evaluation. A state senator called for an investigation into guardianship abuse. And through it all, Marcus watched from the sidelines. He wasn't the story anymore. He was just the person who'd opened the door. That was enough. Then the video appeared. Someone at the facility, maybe the nurse, maybe someone else, had recorded Eleanor. The footage was grainy, taken on a phone, but clear enough to see what mattered. Eleanor sitting in a chair by a window staring out at nothing. Her hands in her lap, fingers wrapped around something small and golden. Her mother's necklace. A staff member approached, offered her food. Eleanor shook her head, kept staring. Then someone showed her a photograph of Maya. Marcus didn't know how they'd gotten it, didn't know who had taken it, but he watched as the photograph was placed in Eleanor's hands, watched as she looked down at it, watched as her face, blank and distant and sedated, suddenly crumpled. She started to cry, and then she spoke. The first words she'd said in weeks. "The little girl with the bear. She was kind. She was kind to me." Marcus saw the video at work, watched it on his phone in the break room, surrounded by coworkers who didn't know the full story, who had no idea that the little girl Eleanor was talking about was his daughter. He excused himself, went to the bathroom, locked himself in a stall, and cried. Maya found the video too, eventually. Someone at school showed her. Kids were cruel that way, or maybe just curious, sharing something they didn't understand because it was everywhere and everyone was talking about it. She came home quiet that day. "Daddy?" "Yeah, baby?" "The old lady on the internet. She said I was kind." "I know. She remembered me. Even after all this time." "Yeah, she did." Maya was quiet for a long moment. "Then we can't let them keep her locked up, can we?" "No, baby, we can't." "So what are we going to do?" Marcus looked at his daughter. 8 years old, too young for all of this, but somehow old enough to ask the right questions. "We're going to keep fighting," he said, "until someone listens." Maya nodded. "Okay, I can do that." The Whitmore family requested a meeting. No lawyers this time. No letterhead. No threats. No carefully worded statements. Just a message delivered through Sarah Chen. "We'd like to talk. In person. Just the family." Marcus almost said no. After everything they'd done, the threats, the intimidation, the way they'd used Maya's name like a weapon, why would he give them anything? But then he thought about Eleanor, about the video, about the way she'd held Maya's photograph and cried. "Okay," he told Sarah. "I'll meet with them." You're listening to an original story from the official Shiny Stories channel. The meeting took place at a neutral location. A small conference room in a downtown office building, rented for the occasion. Marcus arrived early. He wanted to see the room before they did, wanted to feel the space, wanted to make sure there were no surprises. There weren't, just a table, some chairs and a window overlooking the city. He sat down, waited. The Whitmores arrived together. 3 of them, 2 sons and a daughter, all middle-aged, all looking like they hadn't slept in weeks, which to be fair they probably hadn't. They didn't look like villains. That was the thing. They looked tired and scared and maybe a little ashamed. "Mr. Thompson." The older son extended his hand. Marcus didn't take it. The hand dropped. Fair enough. They sat across from him. No one spoke for a long moment. Then the daughter, Margaret, he remembered from the articles, cleared her throat. "We owe you an apology." Marcus waited. "We threatened your daughter. That was wrong. That was wrong." She stopped, swallowed. "There's no excuse for it. We were scared. We were trying to protect ourselves. But that doesn't make it right." "No," Marcus agreed. "It doesn't. We want to make this right." "How?" Another pause. The brothers exchanged glances. "We're dropping the legal threats. All of them. The investigation is going forward, and we're not going to fight it. Whatever happens to us. The older son's voice broke slightly. We deserve it. What about Eleanor? The room went quiet. That's why we wanted to meet with you, Margaret said. We need help. We don't know how to fix this. We've been so focused on protecting the family, the money, the name, the reputation, that we forgot. We forgot she's our mother. We forgot she's a person. She started to cry. Silent tears quickly wiped away. We want to bring her home. Really home. Not a facility. Not doctors and nurses and medication. Home. Where she can be comfortable. Where she can be herself. Why are you telling me this? Because you're the only person who saw her as a person in the last 5 years. The older son leaned forward. You gave her a bowl of noodles and let your daughter offer her a stuffed bear, and it was more kindness than we've shown her in a decade. So yes, we're asking for your help. We're asking what we should do. Marcus looked at them, at these wealthy, powerful people who had done terrible things and were only now realizing the cost. He could hate them. Part of him did, but he thought about what Eleanor would want, what she'd asked for that night in the rain. Just someone to see me. Start by seeing her, he said. Really seeing her, not as a problem or a burden or a threat to your inheritance. Just as your mother. Ask her what she wants. Listen when she tells you, and then do it. That's it. That's everything. 3 months later, Marcus received an invitation. Eleanor Whitmore was being released from the facility. Her guardianship was being dissolved, pending a new evaluation, a real one, this time, by independent doctors with no ties to the family, and she wanted to see him. He brought Maya. The house was nicer than anything Marcus had ever seen up close. Old money architecture, immaculate grounds, the kind of place that appeared in movies about people who never worried about electric bills. But Eleanor wasn't sitting in some formal parlor or grand living room. She was in the garden, in a wheelchair. Yes, her body had weakened during the months of sedation, but her eyes were clear. Clearer than Marcus had ever seen them. She smiled when she saw Maya, the girl with the bear. Maya walked over and knelt beside the wheelchair. I brought him back, she said, pulling Captain from her backpack. In case you wanted to hold him again. Eleanor took the bear, held it against her chest the way she had that first night, in that small apartment, in that other life. Thank you, she said. Thank you for seeing me. The changes didn't happen overnight. Nothing ever does, but they happened. Eleanor moved back to her own home, not the facility, not a hospital, but the house she'd lived in for 50 years. She had caregivers now, good ones, hired for their kindness rather than their willingness to keep quiet. Her children visited, awkwardly at first, stumbling through conversations they should have had years ago, but visiting, trying. The investigation concluded with reforms, new oversight for guardianship cases, new requirements for independent evaluation, new protections for people like Eleanor, who had been silenced by the people who were supposed to protect them. And Marcus, the Whitmore family offered him money, a lot of money, enough to pay off every bill, buy a new apartment, send Maya to any school she wanted. He turned it down. I didn't do this for money, he told them. I did it because it was right, but they insisted on something. Pushed until he agreed to let them set up a scholarship fund in Maya's name, an educational trust that would cover her schooling through college and beyond. She deserves it, Margaret said. After everything we put your family through, she deserves at least that much. Marcus didn't argue. Some battles weren't worth fighting. He kept working at the warehouse, same shifts, same lifting, same loading, but something had changed. The whispers in the neighborhood had shifted, the suspicion had faded. Now when people looked at him, they saw something different.
Not a threat, not a troublemaker, just a man who'd done the right thing when it mattered. On Maya's 9th birthday they went to visit Eleanor. She was doing better now. The fog of medication had lifted. Her mind, though not perfect, was sharp enough to argue with her doctors and complain about the food and demand that her children stop treating her like glass. She's a handful, one of the nurses admitted, smiling, but we wouldn't have her any other way. Maya sat with her in the garden, showing her drawings from school, telling her about her friends and her teachers and the boy in her class who kept pulling her hair because he didn't know how else to get her attention. Eleanor listened to all of it, asked questions, laughed at the right parts, and Marcus watched from a distance, standing in the doorway thinking about all the ways this could have gone differently. He could have driven past. He could have called 911 and left someone else to deal with it. He could have handed her back without question, without hesitation, without ever learning what was really happening. So many moments where he could have turned away. So many moments where turning away would have been easier, safer, smarter, but he hadn't. And because he hadn't, an old woman was sitting in a garden laughing with a 9-year-old holding a stuffed bear named Captain. On the way home, Maya fell asleep in the back seat. Marcus drove slowly, watching the city pass by outside the window. The same streets he'd driven 1,000 times. The same buildings, same lights, same cracks in the sidewalk. But everything felt different now. Not fixed. The bills still piled up. The work still exhausted him. The world still looked at men like him with suspicion and fear and assumptions he'd never be able to fully escape. But different. He'd done something that mattered. Made a choice that changed a life. Maybe many lives. And his daughter had watched him do it. Had learned from it. Would carry it with her into whatever future she built for herself. That was something. That was more than something. He pulled into the parking lot of his apartment building. Same spot he always used, under the broken streetlight that nobody ever fixed, turned off the engine, sat there for a moment in the silence. Then he looked in the rearview mirror at his daughter sleeping peacefully in the back seat and smiled. Marcus Thompson didn't save the world. He didn't become famous or rich or powerful. He just didn't look away. One rainy night he stopped when he didn't have to. He helped when it would have been easier not to. He spoke up when silence would have been safer. And because of that, one woman got to see the garden again. One family learned what they'd forgotten. One little girl learned what it means to be kind. Sometimes, that's all it takes. Sometimes, not looking away is enough to change everything.
Join us to share meaningful stories by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to start your day with profound lessons and heartfelt empathy.